Hey, I just came on here to talk about my experience yesterday with my children. So my daughter tells me that my younger son doesn't know what an African American is. And I said, that's good. My older two children have been to the institution of school before, the institutionalized version of school before, whereas my younger son has not. He's been homeschooled from jump. He's been to daycare before, but he's been homeschooled since starting the age of school, being school age. After taking a shower, always getting information through water, it came to me to discuss with them where African American came from and what was the purpose for calling people African American. And I tried to take it back and condense it as like the Cliff Notes version. But in that, it just was very negative because giving them the rundown on the history of around the time slavery came about, it wasn't good. Thinking back at it, there was a lot good that happened, but in a sense of like innovation and things like that, and people who had that revolutionary spirit or the inner moral compass of justness and righteousness. There was that good. But from declassifying us as Negro to African American to Black to keep us away from who our true identity is. Not everybody came from Africa. There were inhabitants of this land before people came over here to claim the land or colonize off of the land. That's just a fact. There's history of that. There's evidence of that. So, like, even having to tell my children what the original meaning of picnic was, and that they used to consume, not used to, they would consume us. And then just all of the horrific things that are shared, or the defamation. You know how you sue somebody of like defamation of character? The defamation of what they shared about us being animalistic and we're lazy and we're this, just the stereotypes that have been put out and to taint melanated people. It's really a bully energy. It's like the one that is insecure about what they don't have or the capabilities they don't have, so they pick at other people and be like, you're this and you're that, and then they have them feeling insecure. But you know, you could just stand up to your, get rid of the fear, and you can stand up to your bully. That's one thing. Oh, so back to the story. Tell them about the boycotts. Tell them about Juneteenth, of how not everybody was freed in 1864. Took a while for the news to get over west, probably intentionally. Probably was like, well, we won't tell them over there. That way we can still operate. And that's one thing to say, like, if everybody's not free, that's not freedom. That's not true liberation if there's still people in bondage, mentally or physically. And then the part of like the Jim Crow era, they want us to fight in wars, but we couldn't drink from the same space as them, use the same space as them. I discussed the North and South, the Confederacy, the sisters or daughters of the Confederacy, and how they control what goes in the schools books as history. How they didn't want us to read, how they didn't want us to vote in order to keep us, how they were able to pass all these laws before we even knew what was going on, and allowed slavery to continue by incarceration. They put it in there like, you can't have slaves unless you were convicted of a crime. So the disenfranchisement, the oppression, that was the context of the whole conversation. Because while although the truth is ugly and sometimes painful to hear, it's necessary to discuss these things. It's necessary to not act as if it didn't happen and change the meaning of it. Now we're calling picnic where we just, go into the park and sit down with a basket and have some cheese and wine. Like, what? So that leads me into this mindset, this concept. Because that was just the general, conception. I asked them afterwards what they got from it. None of them repeated the negativity of what they heard, except not all were freed, about the bus boycotts and how they didn't want us to know who we are as Native American or Indigenous. Whether you're Central American, South American, or North American, you're American. And there were migrations when there were wars and people were fighting. Some chose to migrate, some chose to flee, some chose to fight. So what they say in history, when we say Black History Month, it shouldn't be called Black, for one. Anywhere else in a country, they don't consider them yellow or orange or white. It's, what are you? I'm Chinese, or I am where you're from. So nowhere else we're considered, and that's not even the proper context, because we're brown. So it should be Brown History Month or Melanated History Month, however. But then that brings me to, that's what I wanted to say. It brings me to the question, what is BHM? What was the purpose of BHM? To me, it gives the energy of give them something so they're quiet. Give them a month. Maybe that's an appeasement. Maybe that's an appeasement. Give them a month, and maybe that will distract them from the facts. There was a time where there was melanation and richness and culture and community, the natural way of doing things was the norm everywhere. And that was all of history. That was the whole year. We celebrated our ancestors, or honored and celebrated our family. And so much has been lost in context in this big game of telephone. But my mindset, I don't accept what others give me. So I don't celebrate a month of brown, melanated, cultured people. I celebrate us all year round. Because for so long, the opposite has occurred. So I think it's time we're celebrated for the whole year. Yeah, that's what I think. That's just my opinion, though. Just an imagination, you know? Imagine, what if? Well, yeah, that was pretty much the whole thing I wanted to touch on as we're in this time of what people would call BHM. So yeah, do your research. Empower yourself with knowledge, and that will set you free mentally. Have a great one. Peace, love, and bliss to all.